Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Tech Strong TV and welcome to another episode of Tech Strong Women, the ongoing series that elevates the conversation about gender equity and parity by celebrating the successes of females in IT and so much more. We have so many great conversations. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, as you probably know, but my co-host is Tracy Bannon with MITRE. Tracy, thank you so much for joining me, as always.
Oh, I always get so excited. Thank you very much for allowing me to be a co-host with you.
Oh, listen, we're equals. We are equals. We're not, superior or inferior. And with us today, we have Nicole Dove, who is an amazing female in IT, cybersecurity, and just a rock star in the industry. Nicole, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really thrilled to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. I love anything, effort, or people who celebrate women in tech. So this is like the party to be at. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. All right. Well, hopefully we'll do right by you today. But do want to thank you again for being here. We've got a lot to unpack in today's show. But really, what I want to do is start out by telling us a little bit about what you're doing today, and maybe how you got to be where you are.
Yeah. So I've got like 50 jobs and it's easy because I love them all. So by day, I'm head of security at Riot Games, which is super exciting. It's a new role for me. So I'm really, really happy to be there. Fantastic team, fantastic products and services. I'm also a visiting lecturer at a local university, Clark Atlanta University. And I also extend my teaching into being a LinkedIn Learning instructor where I create cybersecurity courses. And then I sit on a couple boards for two tech startups. One is called Wraith Audio and the other is called CyberSaint. So a lot of tech, a lot of learning, a lot of teaching, a lot of people in my world. But I love all of it and I wouldn't change it for anything.
So how did you find your way, though, to this most recent, right? The head of security. You're one of the few females that I've met so far who are truly head of security. I've got lots of women who are on the rise, and in the security area in particular, it is booming, and that's awesome. It's completely amazing. How did you find your way into that role?
I slipped and fell into tech. And this role was something that I don't know that I expected, but I think that I found myself looking for an opportunity to have impact, right? So my career started, I went to school for accounting and finance. I started my career on Wall Street. It was all I wanted to do. And when I got there, I quickly realized this may not be it, right? So I've got, I don't know if it translates, but I've got purple hair.
Oh, it does. I see it.
Yeah, right? So, back in the day, 20 years ago, it wasn't as accepted as it is now. Mm-hmm. Or, a young woman of color who looks different, presents, different than the typical Wall Streeter. Maybe to be accepted or to rise through the ranks. But I learned a lot. I learned so much. Got into consulting. I loved solving people's problems, right? I loved working on different engagements with different teams and different clients. And I really, really loved the travel. But again, much of the Big Four consulting culture did mimic Wall Street. Mm-hmm. So I said, I've got to figure out how to actually make a change because I began to see how culture impacts the business. So I went all the way to a video game company. I worked at Take-Two that owns Rockstar, had a blast, stayed there about 5 years, did some video game voiceover work, got my first promotion. I was like, I found my people. And then I wanted to do something a little different. So I got into audit. At a payroll company. And that's where I started to just explore all types of things. I was on a team. We built, staffed, and managed international work centers in Philippines, Romania, India, Brazil. I got to live in Romania for a little while. That was fascinating. But then I started to see how every single thing I did, whether it be Wall Street and Treasury and video games or payroll or even international operations, tech was the common thread. Right? We essentially took 20% of the company's headcount and staffed it overseas, and they were able to be seamless and flawless because of technology. I'm like, there's something with this thing. So I really just took my expertise from risk and my willingness to learn tech. And that's how I got into cyber. And what I love about this role is, as the company is growing so rapidly, you see what's happening in the industry, ransomware attacks, new technology. I mean, everything is just exponentially changing. What I like is that I get to bring that business background to cyber, to tech, and help people understand that tech is not, it doesn't slow you down. If you position it correctly, it can actually enable innovation and speed and agility and creativity. And that's what I love most. I would have never, ever thought I would work in tech. Like, I can barely hook up a printer, but I know risk, right? Mm-hmm. And I know people. And a lot of tech is people and risk and really just getting the best product and service to the customer. And that's essentially what brought me right here today.
What I love about that story is the fact that you did not swim in your own lane. You're going back and forth. So many people, I think, just kind of create a vision for themselves and they go for it. This is my goal in life is to be a cybersecurity professional. Great. But you've had a lot of so many varied experiences that you've been able to kind of parlay into what you're doing now. And I wonder how did you create the narrative behind that? Because, when you're thinking about a job title or a job description, and you're maybe going for a particular job or something like that, so many women, we've had this discussion before, if they don't check all the boxes, they'll never apply for a particular job. And so, so many times you look at a job description, you're like, I'm just not sure that, people, what my skills are will resonate or will translate very well without me actually having to explain how things go and how they do actually work. So how have you created the narrative around your experience into what you're doing today and how it all fits together?
Yeah. So creating and changing narratives is the story, right? And I think the important part was not allowing these unicorn job descriptions to intimidate me, right? I think a second motivation was seeing men in positions that they didn't qualify for. I'm like, well, you know what? If they can do it, why not? Right. And so, but as a woman, we think a lot, we're very tactical, right? We think things through. I tried to not think so much about what I couldn't do and thought about what I could do. Mm-hmm. Right. So I'll look at a job description, everything I have, I'll cross that out. I've got that in the bag. Then I look at the things that I don't have and think through, how can I get these things? Or what in my experience may not be exactly this, but lends another perspective on this that I can bring. And then the last part is I'm a non-traditional technologist. So there's going to be a host of things that I bring that nobody else is going to bring. Right. And that's going to be like the magic potion. So, I often challenge women. One of my mentors said, I don't even read the job description. Right. But it takes away that intimidation factor because there's so much of the job that's not on the paper. That's always something I ask in interviews. What do I need to know about this job that I cannot read on this paper? And those are the things that, we need to be prepared for, because it's not so much what you expect to happen. The challenges are always the unexpected. And so just by digging in that tool belt and keeping an inventory for my own self, it helps you have something to pull from when you're changing that story or wanting to change your story and wanting to know what you can leverage to unlock that next level.
Well, you bring up a really good point, a side conversation, which is what has happened with job descriptions. They've become magic unicorn listings. Right. And quite frankly, anybody that I interview, any that I look at, there's never anybody who can check all of the boxes.
Yes.
And it was an important message 20 years ago, but it's an even more important message now. And there's a reverse to that, which is the folks who are putting those things out need to not focus on finding unicorns. You might run across one by accident or the 4-leaf clover in that one yard that you walked by. But in general, what are those applicable skills? What are the crossovers? And what you had was a lot of crossover skills and a uniqueness that other people didn't bring to the table. That's thought diversity, right? Educational diversity, background diversity, right? That's what has helped to jettison you forward. That's fantastic advice.
Yeah, thank you.
So, I'd be interested when you are going through and working and mentoring with other people and helping them to figure out what they want to do with their career. Are there times where they'll bring a job description and you'll help them to walk through, like, don't look at this or interpret it in that way? Do you help them apply the same skills that you've done for yourself?
Absolutely. So this is an exercise that I've used. So this exercise actually was a big part of me coming into tech, right? I was very intimidated by the job descriptions and technology. And it was only because of amazing mentors who were just like, no, you can do this. Go in the room and sell what you have, right? You can do this. And so it's, things are so much bigger when we don't put them down on paper, right? And so, and I realize that a lot of other professionals feel that same intimidation, whether it's within their own field or going into a new field, especially going into a new field, even more going into tech, right? Because it just seems so huge and big and so much relies on it, right? And so because that exercise was so successful for me, it's something I walk people through when they have something that they want to do, when they have a big role they want to apply for. Like, it's a great way to pressure test it, right? Because now you walk in pretty much knowing what they want and what they expect. And now you have the opportunity to align yourself with that and be honest about what you don't have, right? But what your thought process is to how you will get it. Because nobody knows everything, right?
I'm going to guess there are times where, whether it's you or whether it's somebody that you mentor, goes into this conversation and the interviewers walk away going, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought about that. Right. And so whether they hire you or not, they've learned and gained kind of in this, odd reverse mentoring that happens when you're bringing those new ideas to the table.
Oh, yeah. And I've had some interviews that I've done horribly on, but those were learning experiences too, right?
Yeah. I feel like, with these job descriptions in particular, I think companies do that on purpose so that they can kind of gauge the type of people who do end up applying for those jobs, because those are the ones who are the mavericks, if you will. Those are the ones who really feel as though they can bring as much as possible to the table. And they know that they're not, they don't have 45 years of whatever, but they think that they're qualified for the job, and that alone should get them in the door. But at the end of the day, it's kind of this push and pull between being what people expect you to be and being your authentic self, your true self, what you're capable of doing and who you are at your heart. And that sometimes can be a difficult thing to reconcile, being your true authentic self when you don't tick all the boxes. And so has that ever been a challenge for you to kind of get beyond just knowing that that maybe who you are is not really everything that this person wants you to be on paper, but that you bring so much more to the conversation?
So let's unpack the term, like, who they want you to be, right? Yeah. Because what they really want is somebody who can get the job done, right? We get in our heads like, and I am so guilty. And honestly, Charlene, I'm guilty of this with every single job that I take, even till this day. I don't know why this is a lesson I have to keep learning, but it's like, as soon as I step outside the box and I do something bigger, I'm like, oh crap, they really think I can do this. I'm like, oh, okay, I got to deliver now. And you get so caught up in that ticking and tying and going back to that profile that sometimes you don't see the forest for the trees. Because when you really take a look, it's like, it's not about knowing those things. It's about it's not even about knowing everything. It's about being relentless about finding the solution, being resourceful about looking for the answer, right? If there's something that you don't know, instead of just going to ask someone, figure out a couple options. Do you know how much I Google like all the time, right? And I felt so bad about that at first, but now that I've been in cyber for a while, I realized there are so many domains. Like I know a little bit about everything, right? Mm-hmm. But sometimes I need that deep expertise. I'm not expected to be an expert across the board. So I think it's more about taking a step back and understanding what's needed to thrive and be successful in the role, and making sure that I'm checking those boxes as opposed to like a set of technical aptitudes and expertises, because I'm not going to have that. I study all the time now, and it's never going to happen. But it takes some time. And as much as I'm saying this, I'm probably going to be going through this tomorrow anyway. So.
I think that it's common, and I'm finding that at first I thought that it was more women. Sometimes we call it the imposter syndrome, and I used to think maybe it was more with females, but I'm actually realizing that it's not. It's everywhere. It's everybody. However, to your point earlier, I do see a difference with a woman looking at the list and wanting to be a perfectionist and looking to checkmark everything on that list, where sometimes a man goes, I got 3 out of 5. That's good enough. And I think what you're saying is, don't worry about everything that's there. Be close, be energetic, bring your life to it, bring all of your life energy along with you, and see what happens with it. See what happens with it. You know, along that line is the number of changing job requirements or job descriptions where they no longer are including advanced degrees. I'm seeing a lot in technology where it's like, yeah, we used to want a master's degree in computer science and somebody who was doing postdoctoral. There'd be wonderful educational, academic credentials that they would want. IBM is one of the first ones to say, let's go non-traditional, and they're expanding their workforce in crazy amounts. Do you think that that's helping with some of the other work that you're doing? I really want to hear a little bit about IANS and that kind of mentoring, because you're helping people who are in all kinds of different roles. You're not necessarily mentoring kids at that point. You're out there mentoring the world.
Yeah. So I love this question because I think, and especially with me now having a foot in the education, the academia world, I'm seeing things shift, right? I love LinkedIn Learning because it saved me so many days, right? Because there can be a project that I need to work on or lead that I might not have in-depth experience in. And I can go and find a course on LinkedIn Learning, and within an hour, right, I've got a foundational understanding of what's happening from a verified expert or professional. And my certificates from Harvard, my double bachelor's from Clark Atlanta didn't create that. Right. It was that 1 hour that I sat and learned. When I think about like different career experiences that I've had, on the job learning is something that I think hasn't been prioritized as much in the past as maybe it is now. Yeah. Right. And I think that's what's beginning to rise. I think education is going to shift. I think on-demand learning and on-the-job experience is going to become much more acknowledged and respected than it has been traditionally. And I talk a lot about this. I've got a podcast called Urban Girl Corporate World. You'd be surprised at what I had a CISO who went to school for women's studies. Right? The head of risk and security at TikTok, she went to school for finance. She was a former Wall Streeter too, right? But as leaders, it gives us so many different lenses. And that's what I really love about working with IANS as faculty. So IANS is a service that organizations can subscribe to, and they provide a ton of support in different ways. So they've got forums and conferences and online classes, but they have this service called Ask an Expert. And essentially you can look across any cybersecurity domain. We've got about 85 to 100 faculty, typically CISO or CISO directs. And you can spend an hour on the phone with this professional expert and talk about anything. I have helped CISOs look at their strat plans, develop security awareness programs, help government agencies enhance their third-party risk management programs, right? This is different from, again, they could go on LinkedIn Learning and get that foundational aspect, but they want the experience, right? Mm-hmm. And I think to your point, Tracy, that's what mentorship is about. Getting the firsthand perspective from somebody with experience, because theory is great, but execution is so much better. And, what I'm able to share is, hey, I've done that before, or, oh, you're thinking about doing this? Well, I did that and it flopped. And here's why. Here's what you need to be mindful of. And that's what I find really, really special about that offering with IONS.
I think you're going to see, to the point you just made, the education system is changing. Higher education. One of my besties is a tenured professor, and we talk about this all the time, how it changed with the GI Bill, how it's changing now. But we are always going to need, especially in STEM, we're always going to need those researchers. We're always going to need the theorists. So the theorists won't go away. Right. But we also don't need everybody to be a theorist. So how do we move towards the type of education that you're talking about, which is relevant to where we are now, based on experience, but relevant to what's happening right now, with those theorists helping us to get smarter and stronger as we go. I think we're going to see a big change in the number of students that are, looking at 4-year degrees for different reasons.
I agree. I remember even before, the pandemic, there was a big push to get people doing trades, going back into the trades, because everybody was in college, so nobody could actually unplug a toilet, basically. So, now with the pandemic, we have all these people who have gone on and done a lot of online learning, gotten certifications, and recognizing that, I hope I just didn't waste 3 years of college money in, learning something that quite literally the last 6 months or the last 9 months, going online and really hyper-focusing what I'm looking at, what I'm learning about, is helping me in my career more than my 4-year degree ever did. So I agree with you 100% that the education system as we know it is changing. The traditional 4-year degree probably is going to be going away. And between you and me, I hope it happens within the next 6 years, because I'm sitting on a really fat 529 account that I would like to use that money to buy a summer home or something like that.
I don't think it's ever going to go away, but I think we're going to see it return to a more pure sense. We need, now I'm an advocate of the liberal arts programs where, we teach people how to think. I'm also a big advocate of non-traditional education. It can be on the job. It can be through, boot camps that you take. It can be through LinkedIn Learning. We just have to help with the corporate America to think about the diversity of the education itself and to be more accepting of it. That's the pivot point that we're at right now. As I've been in some interviews where people have, where we're interviewing and I've had to kind of mute out and say, guys, they don't have that, but that's okay. Are you not listening to the story? Right? Are you not listening to the story? So now
I agree with that.
Nicole, do you also, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Tracy.
I was going to ask you if you also, you're mentoring adults in a formal setting with IONS. Are you also still mentoring with some of the other outreach groups that you were working with before?
Yeah. So I typically, kind of the first priority for mentorship that I get now are my students, right? Okay. So that go through my lecture series, just because I'm finding quite naturally, you have like that top 20% of your students that really, really like are excellent and really engage the content and then really take it to practice. And a lot of them, because my course is MBA level, a lot of them are, really starting, or management level or supervisory level in their careers. And, bringing in that people aspect is a totally different ball game than just being a tactical executor. I also speak a lot at conferences. My podcast has an online community of about 800 women from all over the world where we talk about, different things about our experiences as women in the workplace. And then, this industry is so small. And we're just circles of people intersecting. And so there's always, different CISOs who are starting mentoring circles, and they may want you to meet someone and meet someone else. So a lot of it is very organic, but I am very intentional about connecting with professionals on the rise and like the next generation of professionals, because every single fantastic opportunity I have had, 9 times out of 10 is going to be because of a mentor or somebody who sponsored me or spoke up for me. Mm-hmm. So I feel obligated to pay it forward. There's no possible way.
I agree. I think, where we go in our lives from a career perspective has a lot to do with the influence that other people have on us and as well as the influence that we have on other people. So I would be loath to be able to count on one hand how many experiences or how many opportunities I got by answering an ad in the newspaper or online. The best ones have always been, I know somebody who's looking for this person. I think you'd be perfect for the job. So, and I think, again, that kind of goes back to that being your authentic self conversation, because, these people know who you are. They know what you're capable of doing, and they know what you can bring to an organization. And I think that can only be had by developing these relationships, whether it's with the people you're mentoring or who are mentoring you, or even just people who you're working with on a day-to-day basis. I always think that it's best to bring your authentic self to whatever you do, and that can pay off in spades.
Agree.
Now, Nicole, you do a lot of mentoring, but let me turn the question a little bit. Did you have mentors? Are there people that you're like, it hadn't been for Joe or Sally or Mary or who any stories you can share with us there?
Yes there.
Uh-huh.
Man, there are so many stories I can share. I'm going to share. So I was at a tech conference once, and there, even now, but even more so years ago, there are very few women, right, in attendance. And so I am a complete introvert. And so after I engage with people, lots and lots of people, I need to take a break and just kind of like replenish. So if you're at a tech conference, the best place to take a break as a woman is the women's lounge, because nobody else is going to be in there. So I'm at the women's lounge, and I'll never forget this, in the St. Regis in Atlanta, and I'm just hanging out, being an introvert on my phone. And in walks a woman who was on the stage earlier. And I had really admired what she spoke about. And I had said to myself, I'm going to reach out. I'm going to talk to her before the day is over. But again, I'm in like relaxed introvert mode. I'm like, we're in the restroom. That's so weird. I'm not going to talk to her. And I just kind of left it alone. And she came back and she was like, oh my God, you're an introvert too. I'm like, yes, my people. And so we just started talking, and I mentioned some things that she had spoke about earlier. And she was just like, oh my goodness, we just have to stay connected. And we have. She has been so instrumental to my growth in the industry, right? I ended up changing jobs sometime after. She helped me think through, which options to take, which aligned and why, right? The industry is small. I know this leader. I know that person. Oh, you need to meet such and such, right? Like if I really trace it back, my opportunity at Riot kind of goes back to her and some folks that she connected me with some time ago. And her name's Olivia Rose. She's a CISO at Amplitude. She is just phenomenal and fantastic. And I strive and hope to be half of what she was to me, to many others, because literally mentors have changed my life. Another one is Trina Ford, who's the CISO at AEG. When I was first thinking about coming into tech, she was the chief business security officer at my then company. And I reached out to her and I was like, I'm not sure, but I'm really interested. And she was like, I think you would be good. You should interview. Right. Just getting that nod of approval or getting that push, it makes so much of a difference. And I these are women that I call on often for advice, for perspective. And they're just fabulous. And I only can imagine, what challenges they had to overcome to get where they are. Right. And so I'm really grateful to have amazing women like that in my space, in my circle.
And do you have any mentors? Go ahead, Charlene, please.
I was just going to say, it sounds like they were all organic
mentoring. They weren't set up. It's just like you click with somebody or you don't.
And if you click with somebody, then
those are the best relationships to have because you know each other.
You know where your strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah,
sorry.
A lot of people try to force it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I love the idea of mentoring programs. And I love them when they work, but I really do think that the best mentors are the ones who you actually kind of find on your own, whether intentionally or unintentionally.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, have all of your mentors been women? And the reason I ask that is that when I look back over my career, a lot of my career, I've been the only woman in the room. Mm-hmm. So one of the most impactful mentors to me was a fellow by the name of Scott Barr, and he was the wind beneath my wings. He just said, no, you are this, go and do this. And he would open doors, not literally open the doors. He would open the door of opportunity and say, you need to charge through that. And we would talk it through. And I know that I would not be where I am right now had he not, looked at this person a couple of years younger and said, what are you doing over there being quiet? Get up here at the table.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they have not all been women. One of my favorite and most impactful mentors was a man, Steve Chiono. I was working in audit and I audited him. And I think he was just really impressed with my preparedness, my executive presence. And he told me, he said, if you ever need anything, let me know. And I was like, okay, I'm going to call you. And I called him, right? And he helped me navigate some of at that point, some of the biggest decisions that I had in my career. And what I loved about Steve is that, first of all, legal is much like cyber or audit. It's a service to the business, right? So he has a perspective of how you have to position your offerings in order to get buy-in, right? How to effectively manage relationships and rapport, which is something that I might not get from another business leader because, right, they are income driving. What I also liked about him, he would always, sometimes, like, I was so young and like so ambitious, and he would just say, Nicole, get out of my office. Like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Right. And I love the candor because sometimes you need to tell super young, ambitious kids, like, a lot of things are timing, not now. And I can't imagine had I taken some of these opportunities that were just crazy, it would have rerouted my path. But having someone to ground me and tell me when I'm absolutely nuts, but then motivate me and push me. And what I love most, and I say I love most because I love so much about Steve, he never tried to make a decision for me. He helped me think through the consequences and downstream impact of my options. Yeah. And that is a great mentor.
That absolutely is. Don't tell me what to do. I may ask you for a little bit more guidance than what you're giving me right now. I may say, let's role play a little bit, but don't tell me what to do and teach me, help me figure it out. I love it. I love it.
That is great. So you're actually keynoting at RSA this year, right?
Yes, I'm so excited. I am really
Tell us
excited
about that. How did that come about?
So RSA, I mean, that's like the godfather of the tech conferences. And I remember when I first got in tech, one of my peers had presented at RSA and I was just like, wow, it seems so big, so far, so great. And it's like, I want to do that one day because I really, really love speaking and I love speaking about tech. And I love speaking about being a woman in tech. So when I saw the open call for RSA, I was like, you know what? I'm going to throw my name in the hat. And I did, and it worked. So I'm really excited. I'm going to be on the C-suite track. And I'm going to be talking about how your business information security officers are your cybersecurity secret weapon. It's a new emerging role in the industry, right? Many companies are starting to build this into their teams or leadership teams, but I don't know that a lot of organizations know how to best leverage them. And so I think by helping them understand how to unlock all of the benefits and juice that come with the BSO, I think it can really help take organizations and their cybersecurity programs to another level.
That is awesome. I wish you the best of luck with that. That's going to be a great discussion. And you know, do you have other folks who are going to be speaking there with you, or are you doing it all by yourself?
So I'm doing a solo presentation by myself. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Hopefully we see you there. I am hoping to make it there. It's hanging in the balance right now, but it would be fun to connect. It would be fun to connect.
Listen, we won't be hard to find. I'll have purple hair. You'll have pink hair. Right?
That's right. We'll form our own. No, all colors and coalitions. We'll be doing it. We will be doing it. So, hey, you know, as we've been talking about mentoring, I mentioned this to Charlene earlier. You know, I try to really tailor where I spend my time, not to be stingy with it, but it's very easy to bleed out by just wanting to be too many things to too many people. I noticed a trend across years that you're not necessarily at the food pantry, but you are, you know, and I don't mean that as a negative. I mean, you're figuring out, how do you get the most bang for the buck? How do you take the things that you're doing during the day? It looks like you're using that as a way to kind of tailor where you're mentoring and how you're leaning in. Is that fair to say? I mean, give some guidance to those listening on how do you figure out where to mentor, where to build community, where to invest your time with the extracurriculars that, you know, that are tangential to career.
Yeah. I think that the first thing is being intentional, right? And being self-aware. It's like, and it starts with your own journey. Everything that I pour into people is motivated by what I wish I knew then, right? Like I strive to be the person that I needed then. And I think that begins to lay the roadmap for the communities you engage in, the perspective that you hope to share, right? And so I think another big thing too is you can't be everything to everybody. Pardon me. So it's about carving out time for that specifically. So for me, I typically will take mentoring calls one day a week and I'll block off, you know, maybe 3 or 4 hours, right? But I also, and maybe it's not necessarily mentoring, because when I say well, maybe it is. Because I see mentoring as more of like a long-term relationship building, right? But sometimes, and I think there has to be a finite amount of that. Because if I'm going to mentor 50 people, I'm going to give them just a tiny bit. I think they deserve more. So I'm more than willing to have a 30-minute conversation, you know, and talk to somebody, you know, go through things and chat through things and pressure test things and brainstorm. Right. But there's going to be a reduced few that I really am going to connect with and carry through that process. I remember I had a mentor once and she said, I do this for 1 year. And I was like, you know what? I love that, because it's like we've got stuff to accomplish. We set goals up front. We check in and we make sure that we're on the right path. And if we're not seeing results, we change courses. But again, I think it's all about carving out time, being intentional, being selective, both the mentor and the mentee, understanding what it is that you have to offer and what that's anchored in and rooted in, and just finding your people. And some of it is trial and error, right? You don't get it right every time, but you've just got to start somewhere and it will all
Well, you've mentioned that there were some very intentional mentoring relationships where you have goals that are set, and so it's more formal. But there's also another side of it that you hit on, which is there are accidental or unintentional or casual mentoring that happens. Both are really valuable. I do have women that reach out who want soundbite guidance, which eventually turns into a little bit more. But you're right. You kind of have to limit that because, you know, that seagull opinions that are provided without getting to understand them and know the context of their life force, right? What's their spark? What's their essence? I can give them some generalities that they might be able to Google, they might be able to find in a book. So the formality, did you find that the formality, making sure that you set goals with a mentor, helped as well?
You know, I think even in the casual mentorships, there's still a little bit of formality in there because I'm not going to set up time with, you know, somebody that I admire just to, like, you know, shoot the breeze, you know, like it doesn't make sense. But there are spaces for that. Right. But if I'm going to take an hour or 30 minutes or 45 minutes out of your day, I want to make it worth my while. Right. And so I think there's always, we always have things that we're working towards. Right. And some of those goals are big. Some of those goals are small, all relevant. But I think making sure that when you get access to this person with this knowledge and perspective that you want to pull from, you make the most of that time because time is the most valuable thing that we have. And, you know, some personalities lean towards they need that structure, right? Some people for the time, they need that structure. On the other side, you know, some personalities like it a little bit more fluid. And if that's what works, go for it. But I think within both, we've got to be intentional in what we're hoping to gain and what we're hoping to give.
Thank you for that. I learn something every time we have a conversation, every time that we engage in one of these with any of the guests that we've had. Charlene, I think we're running a little bit low on time.
Yes, we only have a couple of minutes left. So I want to actually close with one question, and maybe we can just kind of think about it if we can't actually answer it here. But what is the one thing that you wish you had done differently in your career?
Not second guess myself. Just go for it. Worrying is a waste of time. It's a waste of time. Either you win or you learn, right? So, you know, winners never quit and quitters never win. So just keep going. If I would have I would have probably saved everybody so much time, including myself.
That is great advice. I actually recently read something that somebody said something to the effect of, you can't run the race before it starts. You know, you can't worry about things that you really don't have any control over. So
I love that. I love that. You know, stop second guessing.
Just live your life, you know, in the best way possible. So I think it's great. Nicole, thank you so much for your time, your expertise, just for being so awesome. We really do appreciate your being on Tech Strong Women. It was a great conversation. I sure hope you'll come back and join us again on a future episode.
Absolutely. Thank you, lady. Charlene Tracy, you are amazing. And I love this platform and what you're doing.
Well, thanks, guys.
You.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. We've got lots more Tech Strong TV coming up, so stay tuned.